very excited to be talking to Marzieh Abbas. She is an author of many different books, including this one that just came out, Awe-Samosas. And we're going to be talking to her about her books and writing, and including, sorry, I have a few more of her books to show you. I'm so excited. I got a bunch of them out of the library, and this is not even all of them for you. A Dupatta Is. She also has Henna Is that's coming out later this year, I believe in July. And she also has these amazing early chapter books. This is just a few of them. There are actually a number of those that she's written. Nadia and Nadir. Here's Ramadan, Cookies, Hurricane Helpers, and Lunch in the Leaves. She has a whole bunch of these on different topics. They're really fun for kids to read. And let's see if I've missed any. A Ramadan to Remember, which I don't have my copy of, it is also a really wonderful book. And so we're going to be talking to her about all of those. Well, of course, we won't have time to talk about books that the most recent books that she's had out. So thank you all for joining us. As you know, we come every Thursday. We are usually at 2 o'clock Eastern. We have a special time this time for our guests. So today we're coming a little earlier, but usually 2 o'clock Eastern. Just watch for those announcements, because sometimes we do have a slightly different time, but always on Thursdays. So you can watch out for that. And of course, if you want to donate to help our nonprofit so we can keep on putting on these interviews with these amazing creators, please do that. You can go to the link in our bio for a way to donate. We also have merch that we're selling now. And so you can go and check all of that out. All right. Just getting her on here for you. And again, thank you all for joining us. And we have a really great lineup of more authors, illustrators. Sometimes we even interview publishers. And I think it says unable to join. So maybe you can try again. I'm not sure what's going on. We're just working on getting Marzieh on here for you guys to talk about. Again, maybe I'll just mention again some of her books that are coming out. The latest one is Awe-Samosas, which is about a girl who is learning to make her grandmother's recipe, but she can't get a hold of her grandmother because of the time difference with Pakistan. And of course, it's something that a lot of kids are dealing with, those kinds of issues. So she has to learn how to think outside the box and kind of be creative and put her own spin on this recipe. And here you are. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you doing? Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
this
I know
is my first IG live, so.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Well, I'm so glad it worked out, and also accommodating the time difference. I know it's pretty late there for you, so thank you for joining us.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Such an honor.
Well, why don't we jump right in, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself, and especially what was your journey to becoming an author? Is that something you always wanted to do? I know you started as a baker, but what was that like for you?
So I never actually dreamt the author dream, but I think it was around 2019 when I was taking a break from my baking, which I had been running home-based cake business from since 10 years. So I was taking a break from that. I had my second daughter, my second child, and she was around 1.5. And I began journaling and writing letters to my kids. And I never thought I would get them published, but one day I made a cousin of mine read them, and turns out her daughter was working with an Islamic publisher, which I had no clue about. And she asked me she said, why are you just writing books for your own kids? You should be writing these kind of stories for kids all over the world. And that's what, she planted that seed, and that's where it went from. So I never thought I would be here. And my first few stories were, there's books which are about Ramadan, but with Islamic publishers. So they're not really meant for people who are not familiar with the customs. And then I started thinking, why don't I write for, about Muslim kids and about my Pakistani culture. but you know, something that's accessible for kids who would like to learn something about the culture. And really, I just started off with this feeling of wanting to share the joy of being different and celebrating, you know, your identity. So my debut was a Dupatta Is, uh, and its companion book, which is releasing in July, is called Henna Is. And then I wrote this came out in January this year. I think you already introduced my books, but I'm just and this one is the latest one that just came out in March. So yeah, it's been busy, and I have a lot of chapter books. So there are 12 in the Nadia and Nadir series, and I just turned in 6 more for review, and they'll be coming out later. Yeah.
That's so exciting and so amazing that you've published so many books in a relatively short period. But I know that you said that you wanted to put yourself out there as someone who is Pakistani from Muslim heritage, and to write stories that you wanted your kids to be able to read. So what was the gap that you saw? What was missing that you like? What is that you're trying to fill with your books?
So I grew up in the UAE, and I moved to Pakistan when I was 12 or 13. And I really never had access to public libraries in either of these locations. And when my son was about 5 or 6, I began taking him for these remediate classes, and it was like a library. The waiting area was a library, and they had recent publications, as in maybe 5 to 7 year old books in their on their shelves. And I used to sit there with my younger daughter, and we used to go through these books. And I, you know, whenever I would read the books to her, I would kind of make up these stories with, and every character, you know, when you have a little kid, they think every girl in the book or every boy in the book is themselves, right? This, even if the name is not theirs, they'll say, "Oh, so this is me," or she'd start pointing to herself when she'd see the, you know, she'd point at the book character. And so I would like, you know, switch out names, and I would switch out words that she was more familiar with, and that's, I guess, what got the wheels turning. And I began thinking about, and at that time I didn't, like I said, I didn't have access to you know, books that were published by Pakistani authors. I think the first one who really inspired me was Sadia Faruqi, when I saw the Yasmin series.
Yes.
And yeah, so she's also from Karachi, the same my hometown. So, you know, when I saw that, and I was like, wow, she's like writing for kids, and really, when you have to think about it, kids all over the world are just the same, right? We have the same joys, the same things make us laugh. We have so much more in common. Not just kids, all of us, right? But I think kids see it more clearly. They don't have all the layers that we kind of develop as we grow up. So I just felt like there's, you know, the universal topics are common. And of course, when you imbue your specificities into it, it becomes so much richer, right? So I guess that's how it all started. And I was lucky to win a scholarship with the children's book CBA, Mira Reisberg's Children's Book Academy. And that's where I learned about agents and querying, and yeah.
The business,
So that's how,
side of it, right?
yes, yeah. And that's so important to get introduced to.
Well, that's so beautiful, and I love hearing you talk about, especially like you said, that even though your books have things that are very specific to like the culture, but the universal themes I think any kid can relate to, such as your new book. Could you tell us all about Awe-Samosas? And again, this is something that has so much that's from Pakistani culture, like obviously making samosas, and yet a lot of what she goes through, I think every kid can relate to that feeling like things are not going how I want them to. And anyway, can you tell us about the book?
So what inspired it was basically, after I got married, I was introduced to these special samosas that my mother-in-law makes that were sweet. and I'd never eaten sweet samosas before. I had all kinds of savory samosas, but it was so intriguing to know that there were samosas that could be filled with like sugar and cardamom and nuts and coconut flakes, and they are the most amazing things you can eat, and they're like baklava in a samosa, um, just to put it. So that's what inspired the story. And you know, when I was very young, I learned from my mom how to wrap samosas, and I didn't know it's such a skill to have, because uh, even now, like, even like as an adult, I keep hearing adults tell me, how do you wrap them yourself? Don't you get them wrapped? So you know, and then I realized, oh, that's the thing. So and a lot of people struggle with that. So and I'm a very experimental cook myself. I love to cook, and you know, I just go by what's on hand. You know, those master chef sessions where you have this limited pantry and just go, right? So I guess that was it's a very personal story, and the creativity and the problem solving was very organic. And one problem just leads into another. So first, Noor is, you know, she's this she's this character who loves to cook with her grandma, and her grandma is away in Pakistan, and Noor's friends are coming over, and she's a little bit of a perfectionist, and so she wants to recreate this recipe. And so first she can't find the recipe, and then when she finds the recipe, she can't find the ingredients, and then when she does, she thinks about her friends who have all kinds of very diverse group of friends who are coming over, and she thinks about what they like to eat. And then when she finally gets all the fillings in order, she forgets how to wrap the samosas. So it's just one thing after the other, and she has a talking parrot who is pretty much like a, you know, like an affirmative inner voice, in the shape of a parrot, and he keeps saying these words in Urdu, which are the only words he knows, and which is "Sab theek hai, sab theek hoga," which means everything's great, everything's going to be okay. And so he kind of, you know, she keeps coming up with the ideas herself, but he keeps her positive,
Right.
right? So yeah, that was it, and I had the opportunity to speak to a lot of kids during launch week, and I was amazed at how many kids know exactly what samosas are, and how amazed they are by the fact that there are Nutella samosas in the world. So
Yeah, I
it was
was
fun.
actually wondering that because I didn't know if it was just here in California. I think it's fairly common that everybody knows what samosas are, but I wasn't sure how much. I was curious the kids that you meet, because I know you do a
Oh,
lot of.
they were. There was just a few, and they were feeling so left out. And so one girl came up, because it was all on Zoom, and so she came up and she said, "Can you explain to me how it feels in your mouth when you put a samosa in there?" And I was like, "Oh my heart, she's really hungry." So it was really cute, and all the kids were like bitching, you know, it's crunchy, you know, it's sweet and hot inside, and all of them were saying, you should try the cheese ones, and it was
Oh,
so cute. So we had a really nice time. Yeah.
that's great. I love that kind of reaction. I mean, you can't beat that from kids. And I also love how you've incorporated your love of cooking into this, but also like you said, it also has a message for kids about, you know, what to do when things aren't going as you want them to, and things you don't have all the right ingredients. So what do you hope that kids take away from reading your book?
I think the importance of making do with what you have. That's the main
Mhm.
message that I want them to take away. So you might plan something, and that's how I spoke to them about it in class, in like the classes that I visited as well. You know, when you want to make a craft project and you've seen these, you know, tutorials, and you want to recreate it exactly how it is, but then, you know, you don't have everything on hand, and that's how life is. And then you just need to make do with what you have. And sometimes, because you're boxed into you know, these, because you have these limitations, you might come up with something which you would never have thought of if you know, had just gone according to plan.
Yeah, that's a great.
And I will say that this book was really tough to sell. So you keep hearing that food books are really tough to sell. So although kids love them, I feel like there's a lot of pushback from gatekeepers in the publishing industry.
For this book, do you think?
Yeah,
Oh, why
it
do you think that do you think that they think that kids
food
won't
books.
understand it or relate to it, or
I don't know. No, it's not about. They just say there are too many on our list. There are a lot of food books out there, and they continue to come out. So I feel like, but I feel like kids loved it.
yes.
Like from all my books, this one is really focused on food. All of them have some mention of food, but this one is really focused on food itself. And so, um, but the kind of interaction that I had for this book, I felt like kids really connect with food. Either they've tasted it or they want to taste it, or they have had a variation of, like, some kids talked about dumplings, and so they could relate to it, even though they hadn't had a samosa, but they said, it sounds like a dumpling. So it's amazing how food brings us together as well, right? And you kind of sometimes get introduced to a culture because of the food that you tasted somewhere.
Yeah,
Right?
that's especially for kids. That's such an easy way, like you said, to relate that. And as we've got a comment, food is universal. Also, I don't know, you probably don't have time to read the comments that are scrolling by. We've gotten so many wonderful comments. People love your books. Can't wait to read more of your books. And it's interesting, like you said. I think I always talk to my kids about who I'm going to be interviewing, and I said, yeah, and she wrote a book about samosas, and they were like, wow, we want to read because we love samosas. Like you said, I think that food is just such an easy way for people to connect. I do want to talk. I mean, you've written so many books, and we don't have time to talk about all of them, but I really want to mention A Ramadan to Remember, which I got to review recently. And even though Ramadan's over, but I just thought it was such a great message, because I think it's something that is a situation so many kids find themselves in. It's about what to do when you're in a community that's nobody is celebrating your holiday, in this case Ramadan, and how to still make it special, and also maybe inviting other people to celebrate with you. What do you hope I mean, especially for Muslims, I feel like there are a lot of kids in the US that are, or in other countries, that are in that situation. So what was the message that you have for kids in that book?
So the main message is that yes, it introduces kids who are not familiar with Ramadan to the whole idea of what we do. So there's a whole spread where the main character Zain is actually doodling on the sidewalk with sidewalk chalk, and kids come and ask him, why are you fasting? And it's a really gorgeously illustrated spread. Najwa is the illustrator, and she's done a beautiful job. So, yes, we don't eat, and yes, it's basically a form of worship, right? We're asked to do it as Muslims, but for non-Muslim kids, we've all been there. For all kids, in fact, we've all been in a place where we've been kind of new, a first day of school. People around us who aren't familiar, who don't celebrate the same things as we do. So we've all been there, right? But the important thing is that you can, we can come together and celebrate each other's diversity. And I feel like books themselves, that although we don't mean to be didactic and drive a message home, but whatever kind of book you read, you do learn something. Even as an adult reading picture books, you learn something from it, and that knowledge builds respect, and that respect builds love. And that's that is so beautiful, and you don't even realize it when it's happening. But when you've when you've read a picture book on a topic, you for sure, when that topic is going to come up, you're going to pitch in, and you're going to say, what, this is how they do it, or this is the main message behind it, and I know about this, and you get excited about it, because it's what makes us all connect, right? Celebration and joy, and we all have some kind of celebration. And in this book, they also talk about charity, and this one of the kids says, "Oh, so we do that at Thanksgiving." So it's in we might call it different names, but we essentially all want to spread joy. We want to We want to celebrate our culture, our religion, and we want others to, we want to invite others to feel that respect and love and joy, and so important, especially with all that's going on in the world right now.
Yes, yes, right. It's such a joy to have your books, and again, and just to show a few of them. But I also just looking at the time, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But can you tell us about the new books you have coming out? And especially, I know Henna is released, I think, in July, and you have other books. Are you able to give us a preview of those? I know sometimes if they're very new, you're not able to say much.
Yeah,
But
so I don't unfortunately have. So Henna is coming out in July. It's really it's the same team, the entire, like the illustrator, the editor, everyone is the same as my debut book, Dupatta Is. But the really cute thing here is that we have incorporated this cat who's there on every spread, and she's doing such playful things. And in the end, the girl even puts like little paw prints, henna tattooed paw prints. So it's super cute. The illustrations are just gorgeous, rich, diverse, and of course, henna is not just it's not just put by Muslims. It's put by people in every religion, every, like, lots of different parts of the world, and it's become a trend as well. Even places that it didn't originate in, it's now a universal trend. And some form of henna, whether it's the traditional herbal one or the white henna, which is really trending these days. And I also talk about, very sparsely just mention, the origins. This is about the henna crowns that they do for cancer patients who, undergoing chemotherapy, and they lose their hair, and then they henna it on because it has a cooling effect as well. So it's a healing, cooling, things which are not usually talked about but are so beautiful. And I'm also, so I'm really excited about this one. I have my first picture book biography, which is coming out in October, is about Yasmin Lari. And that is Pakistan's first woman architect. And the amazing thing about her is that she became a philanthropist after running this very successful architectural company. Actually, last year, 2023, she won the most prestigious award from King Charles, which is not even like awarded every year. It only is given if there's someone who really deserves it. And she won that last year. And she actually calls her architecture methodology the barefoot architecture, because it's for people who literally can't even afford sandals to put on their feet. And she makes these beautiful, eco-friendly, zero carbon, zero waste huts out of bamboo and mud, and she uses the local techniques, and she fuses that with her architectural design knowledge, and it's just beautiful. That's illustrated by Hoda Hadidi. So that's cut paper collage, very, very well put together. That's coming out from HarperCollins. And then I have 2 board books releasing this year, which are really exciting because I haven't written in that category. One is called Excited for Eid, and one is called Friday Fun. So for Muslims, Friday is a very religious day, and we have certain religious, we have a prayer gathering, and there's certain rituals which people might not be familiar about, but very sparse language, literally 2-word stanzas. And Anusha Sayed is illustrating that. So I'm really excited about that, coming from Little Bee Books.
oh, that's exciting, and exciting to branch out into a different kind of book for the very young children. I cannot wait to see all of those. Thank you so much for joining us. This is such a pleasure to get to talk with you and to have you take the time. And anybody who joined late, anybody who joined late, it'll be up in just a few minutes on Instagram and then later on our YouTube channel. Thanks everybody who joined in, and thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Everybody.